You may know your credit score, but consumer experts say another number may have an effect on your daily life. They're called surveillance scores, and it's determined by your presence online. And here to talk about what you can do to keep your score up is our tech expert, Dave Hatter. Dave, thanks so much for joining us to talk about this. First of all, explain what surveillance scoring is.
Well, thanks for having me, John. Surveillance scoring is basically data broker type companies that buy your data or get your data from companies like Google and Facebook, and then they run it through algorithms they've created to generate some type of score, and then they sell that to other companies that are going to try to use that score to predict your behavior.
Now, and this is not stuff they're stealing, this information that we have given permission for people to gather this data on. It's just the putting it into the algorithm that's really different.
Yeah, you're exactly right, John. I mean, when you use Facebook or Google, you've given them permission to capture your data. It's that surveillance capitalism model we talk about all the time, right? They're providing these products and services for free or at little cost because they're collecting your data and using it to serve up ads. And now, in this, what some people think is a little more devious and sort of, not necessarily positive thing, they're selling this data to companies who are creating scores for you, and then companies like insurance companies are buying that to determine, are you someone they want to insure? What should your premium look like? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and if one reason why people think it sounds devious is how it's used in China. Explain how the Chinese use these surveillance scoring techniques.
Yeah, this idea, I think, well, I don't know if it originated, but it's certainly become very popular in China. Starting back in 2009, the Chinese Communist Party created a surveillance scoring system, or as they call it, the social credit system, and they use it to rate you. And then, if I'm pretty sure in China, they probably use it to get you to go along with whatever it is they want you to do, because a low score obviously can be used in a negative way against you. And that's one of the things that's tricky about this. Most people don't realize this is happening. There's no way to view these scores. There's no way to know if a company has used this score to penalize you somehow, and there's really no way to see how these algorithms calculate these scores or to dispute a score like you could with a credit score, for example.
Yeah, you talked about how it's having an impact here, but one of the things that really upsets people is that it's predictive. And so you may be penalized for predictive behavior that you've not even done, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right, John. So they take this data, they crunch it with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and they try to predict how you're going to behave. Like a landlord might buy a score from a company that's providing information about renters to determine, are you going to be a good renter? Are you someone they would want to rent to? And again, whether it's algorithmic bias, the software itself doesn't work right or has biases built into it, the data's bad, you might get a bad score, you may be penalized. There's no way for you to know, and unfortunately, there's no way for you to dispute it because you don't know and you can't see that data.
Yeah, is there any way that we can protect ourselves at all?
Well, I think there's a couple things you can do. You can try to limit the amount of information you put out there. Your phone, your car, all these so-called smart devices are constantly collecting information about you. You can turn off features. You can try to limit the amount of information you're sharing. And then, you can contact your elected representatives, ask them if they're aware of these practices, because right now there aren't any laws that protect consumers against this. With new laws like the California Consumer Protection Act, that might have some impact in the future, but just trying to raise awareness and let your elected representatives know your concern, so that they can start to look into it and perhaps either ban this practice or put regulations around it like credit scores so you could see how this might be impacting you.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good information there. Dave Hatter, thank you so much.
Always my pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.